Hello and welcome back. So today I wanted to do a review of a book that I recently finished called The New Childhood. And the reason I want to do a review on this book is because it's one that I went into with kind of my own thoughts and ideas about the topic, and it actually managed to change my understanding and just my approach and feel about all of it. So what The New Childhood is about is raising kids in the modern world with all of the modern technology that we have. And my thought before had been very much of the mind, like as little screen time as possible in my child or potential children's lives. And this book just kind of showed me, like, one, that's not entirely possible. Like, that is the world that we live in. And what we need to do instead of just completely shielding our kids from screens all the time is to teach them how to use and approach technology. One of my favorite things from the book was that it said, or it made the point, that in history, every new technology has been met with this same kind of foreboding and fear. And even when, like, the written word became a thing, like reading literacy was a fear at one time, because it was seen as a new technology that threatened the way things were. And so what we see now is like a wonderful thing for a kid to be lost in a book. At one time, that was the new technology, having, words printed on pages that any individual could read. That was seen as the new technology that was fearful. So I love this book because it made the point that screen time is valuable if you view it together as a family unit. When it becomes harmful is when it is being used just as the babysitter. And another aspect of the book was that it compared it to the hearth, where at one time people would gather and share stories around the hearth, or the fireplace is another term for it. The hearth has become now screens, essentially, and so you can share stories, view stories, hear stories, and it gives a kind of touch point that everyone can come to and relate to. Another thing that I liked about the book, The New Childhood, is that we need to acknowledge that children's devices can be their transitional objects. So just like a teddy bear, a kid gets attached to it, or a blanket, or anything, any toy that you think of as natural for a kid to get attached to and be like very attached to it. We treat that as okay, but when the transitional object becomes something like a phone or a Game Boy or a Nintendo Switch or whatever it may be now, it's treated as really bad if the kid has the same reaction to that being left at home as they would to a teddy bear. And so we need to acknowledge that they are these transitional objects that help the kid or the child relate to the world around them. And I didn't get the sense that the author was saying, like, yeah, a 5-year-old can definitely have a phone be their transitional object, but it was more addressing from a very young age to older ages, so like teenagers. Another aspect of the book that I really appreciated and loved was the focus on video games. And that you can make that a part of a child's playtime. And in fact, it's more beneficial to just say, free time or playtime, and whether they want to spend that outside or playing a video game, let that just be their playtime. You don't necessarily, or what he was encouraging was to not necessarily set aside specific screen time. Because, that it almost makes it like that candy that the kid can never have. Suddenly they become obsessive and want it all the time because it's something that they can't have, or that has like so many limits and rules to it. Whereas if it's just there and just acknowledged, and then you model healthy behavior with that thing, then it's an okay thing. And he also encouraged like playing video games with your kids, and then having that be a way to talk through things with them, or something that happens in the game, talk about what you can learn from it. So he said, like, be a part of it, play the video games with your kids. He said to not just be the gatekeeper when it comes to technology and your kids' devices and screen time. The gatekeeper just says, like, okay, you can do this now. Hand a teenage boy or girl a phone and be like, okay, you can get Instagram now. That would be the gatekeeper. What a guiding parent or guardian would do would be to say, like, okay, here's this app, here's this device. Let's go through how to best behave when using this item. So don't just open the door for them and kind of shove them in and hope that they do okay, but jump in there with them. Be that guide. You want to expose them to online behavior that aligns with your values. And so it's just like, he made the comparison or the analogy. You don't just say to kids, like, be really careful when crossing the road. No, you hold their hands for years as they learn that, the importance of being careful. And so treat it that same way. You don't want to restrict media. You want to just lead them and model the appropriate behavior when you are on media. You want to be careful about how you talk about devices. Don't be overly negative, because I think kind of like what I said earlier with the idea of sugar and candy being taboo or off limits, it makes them more curious. It makes them almost want it more, but also kind of like feel ashamed about that. Don't let it be a negative thing. The future is only going to get more technologically advanced, and we want this next generation of kids coming up in the world to be really well equipped, to be whole, complete individuals and know how to handle devices in a healthy way. And we're not going to teach that by just completely restricting them altogether, or by restricting them for so long and then being the gatekeeper and pushing them into the deep end. With that being said, that like technology isn't going away ever, you do want to teach like technology etiquette. So be that role model for them. And there can be places where technology is off limits. So, dinner table, if that's the behavior you want your kids to understand, devices aren't at the dinner table, and you need to be the one also not having your device at the dinner table. So what I felt a lot of his book was about was being the guide, being the role model, teaching that behavior, and not restricting your kids' screen time to like a prescribed amount of time. As a teacher, I also really liked a part in the book where he said that it would actually be helpful if in school kids were taught that digital text was worthy of analysis. And he made the point that that would probably help a lot of the misinformation that gets puddled around these days, because, you know, we read Frankenstein and Jane Eyre and all of these classic texts with kids and tell them, like, this is worthy of analysis. Yes, whatever Shakespeare wrote is worthy of analysis, and we need to question it and dissect it. But then kids jump on Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever it may be, whatever the new thing is, and they read all of this news on there and all of these ideas from other people. And because in school they're only being taught to analyze and question classic texts, they don't necessarily think to question this tweet from so-and-so, or a post or a caption written by maybe an influencer or someone that they really admire or don't admire online. We need to teach kids to treat digital text as worthy of analysis if we want them to have a healthy relationship with not just now technology and devices, but social media. And in regards to that, he also kind of talked about the author, or she. I don't know who the author is. I know their last name is Shapiro. They made the point that our species will be more united if we learn how to use technology better than we're using it right now. And, you know, my generation, it was kind of the generation where, like, it was a brand new thing. I remember the days before having, you know, our family computer and I could jump on and play, you know, some random game. Like, I do remember that. And so our generation was just kind of like thrown in because it was this brand new thing. But the next generation has the potential to treat social media in a way that can actually bring us more together and not divide us, if we teach our children how to have, like, online etiquette. And we want social media interaction to help us suspend judgment. You know, people like to divide themselves over so many different things. And one of the beautiful things about online engagement is that if you can just connect on one idea with someone, you're connecting with them before you have the time to judge the color of their skin, their orientation, their nationality, whatever it may be. You can't just immediately judge them on all of these, like, superficial things. It does provide the opportunity to connect with someone on a very emotional level initially. And so I love that he made that point, and I definitely think it's true. And, you know, I think our kids have the potential, and we have the potential. I mean, I'm talking like I'm a super old mom. My baby's a newborn, but I have the potential, and the next generation has the potential to use social media and technology as a way to bring us all together worldwide. So I loved that. He said we want to lead kids towards compassion rather than aggression when it comes to engaging and responding and saying things on social media. We want it to be intentional, to be compassionate and not aggressive. And that is one of the problems with a lot of algorithms now on social media, is it's sometimes creepy. The things my phone knows I'm wanting to look up or type or search for, I really do think sometimes that it's listening to me. And there is a problem with those algorithms because they do pigeonhole us, and we need to be exposed to more diversity, not just like in all of the ways that you might be thinking of diversity right now, but just diverse ideas, other people's perspectives on even the tiniest things. We don't need it to all be fed to us, what we want to hear. An additional point was when we engage with certain social media or apps, we need to remember ourselves and teach our kids that we're not just a consumer. We are also on this assembly line telling the ethers what we want and what to create more of. So if you want more positive media in the world, we need to teach kids like how to engage with social media so that that is what is produced. Because if you consume media that is negative and demeaning of anybody, then that is going to be perpetuated. But if we stop consuming and stop being part of that assembly line and instead start to try and focus on positive media, then that is what is going to prevail. And then the final aspect of the book, The New Childhood, that I loved was in it talking about how we need to teach kids that they are going to be constantly transforming and evolving. And one of the problems with the internet is once something's on there, it's on there forever. And it's always been a natural thing for people to be able to kind of like change their identity and grow and learn and maybe kind of try on different hats and try on different identities until they figure out who they are and who they want to be. And one of the problems with the internet is if you put so much out there, it's going to be hard down the road, as you know, after you've grown and learned, it might be hard to kind of go back and erase that and not let that be part of your identity anymore. So it also made the point of helping kids like keep a certain amount of a wall up so that they can have this space as they're still growing and learning who they are before, you know, they post something a little too far and, you know, and then down the line decide like, that's not who I am anymore. Well, it's going to be hard to go back and erase that. And you can see that a lot with people online and whatnot these days. I've seen a few things in, not necessarily on the news, but just like kind of going around about people who, you know, feel really strongly about this strong and important topic, but then someone goes back through their Twitter feed and finds, you know, a bunch of really terrible tweets that they posted years and years ago. And, you know, it really damages their identity now and how far they've come as a person. And so kids also need to be aware of that. We need to allow them the opportunity to reinvent themselves as they grow and learn as humans. So that was a lot. And, you know, as you can tell, my review is less of saying like, yeah, this is terrible or this is good. It's more just kind of sharing what I learned from the book, The New Childhood, and what I want to try and integrate as I raise my own little girl in the world. So if you have read The New Childhood, let me know in the comments below. If you disagreed with the book, if you also liked the book, or if anything stood out to you from it that I didn't mention here, I would love to discuss. Just drop a note. Make sure to like this video and and subscribe to my channel for more English literature related content. I love to do this kind of stuff. So, and your subscription helps make it possible for me and motivate me, and it's just very helpful. So I will see you around and have a great day. Bye.